Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dick Fleming. During the Vietnam War, I was a member of Recon Battalion and 1st Force Recon. I was a long-range scout, and I tell my story in a book called Chasing Charlie, which is available on Amazon. You may also be interested in my website, firstforcerecon.com, where I have some photographs that I took of my time during my tour, and other people have sent me over the years. So you might want to be interested in checking out that URL, firstforcerecon.com. Today I'd like to tell you a little bit about how war breeds corruption, or at least how I believe that Vietnam was corrupt to the core. And when I first got over there, I didn't think that way at all. You know, it all washed by me. I was such a newbie. I saw those little sheds that the gooks had set up to sell everything from cigarettes to booze, you know, along the highway there. And I thought to myself at the time, you know, geez, I wonder where they had gotten all of that, or they got the permission to do all of that. It was right by the air base there. Well, it was the black market in full swing, you know. I was such a newbie, you know. I thought we were over there fighting to, you know, help this poor Vietnamese farmer, you know, from Viet Cong aggression. You know, we're going to be protecting him. You know, I didn't realize I'd be protecting this black market enterprise, you know, as well. You know, those guys are probably making more money than my father ever made in an entire, you know, he probably made more in a month than my father made in a year. You know, you know, here we are defending their way of life. Their way of life. So, anyway, I guess the first time I really realized what was going on was, you know, I was sitting at the enlisted men's club a little bit early. I was waiting for it to open, and Gypsy was behind the counter, and I saw this elegantly dressed Vietnamese woman, you know, young, beautiful, dressed in a silk sarong, you know, beautifully done, you know, red and pink. She was carrying a parasol, a white parasol, and she had like a little pink purse that she carried. And she was walking around the compound, and I was looking at her appreciatively, let me put it that way. And I had seen her before, usually with a top sergeant. You know, they'd be walking around. I didn't pay any attention to them at first. Well, she comes into the enlisted men's club, and I was sitting on the side there, and she goes up to Gypsy, who was the bartender, and she speaks to her, you know, rapidly in Vietnamese. I couldn't understand it, and resentfully, you know, Gypsy responded back to her, you know, and then the woman got even more aggressive, and finally Gypsy took some money, crumpled bills out of her pocket, and gave it to the woman who put it in that little purse. And she said a couple more words in Vietnam, you know, to Vietnamese to Gypsy, and you know, we walked right past me out the door. You know, she obviously saw me doing the whole thing, but I guess she didn't have anything to fear from an enlisted man like myself. And we watched her as she continued walking along the path there. And I said to Gypsy, Gypsy, is this woman shaking you down? She goes, what do you mean shaking down? I said, you know what I mean, Gypsy. You got to give her money? She goes, hey, Marine, everything's Sami-Same. You want beer, you give me money. I want job, I give her money. And we watched. And she went down to the next, a little bit further on down the path, where this old papasan that used to cut our hair was sitting in the shade of a tree. And as soon as she got up to him, you know, he reached into his pocket and he gave her money. So she was doing pretty well for herself. And then I thought about it. I mean, we had lots of Vietnamese working in our little compound. She must have been collecting quite a haul there. You know, we had Vietnamese taking the garbage. They had this giant truck, you know, ramshackle truck that was filled with garbage. They had 3 or 4 guys in there, and they had three or four little Vietnamese girls working in the chow hall. How did they get their jobs? You know, I don't know. I don't know. And then if you went to Freedom Hill, you know, you had these stalls set up in Freedom Hill where guys were selling artwork like that. You know, Vietnamese would sell the artwork like that, and you know, again, you had the Vietnamese handling the laundry there. You know, how did they get that permission to do that? Oh, I don't know. And then when I went on R&R, we had to dress in civilian clothes in order to go on R&R. When we went to the Air Force Base there at Da Nang, they told us we had to buy our civilian clothes from this one vendor, this one Vietnamese vendor. We all had to buy, you know, jeans and, you know, shirts or whatever we wanted we could buy at really inflated prices. But, you know, he was a monopoly there. You know, how did he get his position? Why weren't we able to just buy the stuff from the normal PX? You know, why couldn't we buy our clothes at the PX? Why do we have to pay a premium to buy through him? Well, sure, you know, are we gonna say something? No, I mean, we wanted to go on R&R. We're not gonna make a stink about it. We had lots of money, you know. We're gonna spend it. You know, we're not gonna be held up because one guy doesn't want to, because you don't want to buy the civilian clothes. No way. We're gonna go on R&R. You know. And the same thing with Gypsy, you know, and the corruption inside Camp Reasoner. You know, I don't know where it started or where it ended, but you know what was the story there? I mean, I wouldn't have gone up to the major and say, "Hey, major, you know, we got quite a scam going here. You know, your sir sergeant there is in cahoots with the Dragon Lady and." And they're shaking all of the vendors down for money. Am I going to do that? That would have gotten me, you know, gotten me in trouble fast, right? Oh, I don't know. You know, it's I can't prove any of this stuff, of course. You know, you know, of course, and it's 60 years ago, so who the heck cares? But it went up and down the chain of command. I think, you know, when I was doing the when I was bartending myself, you know, and you know, we had to pay. I was collecting all that money every month, every day from the guys who were buying beers at higher prices than we'd pay for it in the States. And one time I did ask the gunnery sergeant, you know, hey, Gunny, why are our prices so high here? I mean, you know. And he said, well, we're gonna be buying you a stereo system. We'll take that extra money, you know, set it aside for a stereo system, or an air conditioning for the club. Well, you know, he rotated out, and another gunnery sergeant came in, took his place. We never got any air conditioning, never got any new stereo system, you know. And there was no accountability for all that money. It was just cash floating around the box. You know, we didn't have a cash register or anything. Well. And that was just one thing, you know. It was endemic throughout Vietnam. You know, the Koreans, you know, the Koreans, you know, everybody was afraid of the Koreans. I don't know why. The only reason why would be if somebody got in front of their mile-long caravans, they'd get run over. But they could have a jeep. If you left an unattended jeep on the road, they'd have that thing packed up inside one of their trucks, spray painted, and added to the back of the column in half an hour. You know, and we heard rumors that they used to go into a village and shook down everybody in the village for money. You know, rumors or not, I don't know. You know, I saw their caravans going along. I never saw them in the field anywhere, but I did see their mile-long caravans. So we had, and armaments too. You know, if you wanted to be a lieutenant, an officer in the Republic of South Vietnam, apparently you could buy your commission. The same thing in England, they used to sell their commissions. So the colonel would give, if you want to be an officer, you went to the colonel or the major and he gave him money and he made you a lieutenant. And the major wanted to get promoted to colonel, he had to go to the general and pay the general off probably. And went probably all the way down the line, you know, all the way down to the lowest lowest private. You know, he wanted to get out of doing the details and wanted to become a sergeant. He probably had to pay off the top sergeant, the gunnery sergeant or something. So I mean, this was nothing new in warfare even. I mean, you could read about that happening in the Middle Ages, where you had, you know, the knights, if they wanted to gain favor, they'd have to pay their way up, so to speak. So that was the way it was in Vietnam, and of course all of this stuff, you know, paled in comparison to the other scams that were going on. One time the powers that be decided they were going to eliminate all of the old script and issue new script, you know, in a single day, they said. And so when that day arrived, they didn't tell us when it was going to be. You know, all the enlisted men could turn in $200 and get the new script. Well, the Vietnamese were just climbing almost the barbed wire, offering money to anybody who would take it, $100 to one. We'll give you 200 Vietnamese dollar script rather, which is what we use for everything, the old script, and you give us one new script, you know, because they knew their money would be worthless in a little while. But we had as enlisted men, we didn't have any way of exchanging it. But that didn't stop the officers. The officers were going in and out of that compound. The lower echelon officers, I saw them, you know, lieutenants and stuff, were going in and out of that compound as fast as their jeeps could travel. You know, so they probably thought it was one big lark. You know, make yourself a little bit of money before somebody else did. And you know, and the higher echelons, they could have made fortunes with this scam, you know. And of course, it didn't do any good at all, because the next day, you know, the Vietnamese opened up their black market just as soon as they could, and were soon trading away in the new currency. And they knew that probably that would be good for another 6 months or a year or so. So they just learned the lessons. They wanted to exchange it even faster, their money even faster. You know, that was the way to do it. And all of this, you know, this is just chump change when it came to the corporations back in the States. You know, they were the ones who really made out with this war. You know, they were making billions of dollars, you know, in profits. You know, and they wanted to, I'm sure, to keep the war going as long as it could. Why wouldn't they? You know, they were probably patrolling the Pentagon and the offices of power in the Senate and Congress, you know, night and day, because you know every bullet that we fired, you know, would mean another bullet that had to be replaced. You know, every bomb that was dropped had to be replaced. You know, so sure, go ahead and invade Laos and drop more bombs on Laos than you dropped their entire World War II. You know, when Germany and Japan combined. Why not? You know, it sounds like a good idea if you were a bomb maker. You know, part of the military-industrial complex. You know, not too good for the American taxpayer, of course. You know, I think the Vietnam War cost about $1 billion, and it cost $138,000, I understand, to kill one NVA. We should have just given the NBA soldier $138,000. That would have taken care of it and paid him off. Why not? Instead of going through all the other additional trouble. Well, of course, I can't prove any of this that I'm saying. It's just my observations. But when you start looking around and you've been there long enough, and you start looking around, you can't help but see what's going on around you. And of course, the ordinary Marine, we weren't paid very much at all. We were paid $100 a month, I think, as like a Lance Corporal or something, and maybe $25 for jump training and scuba, and $25 for hazardous duty pay. And out of that, we had to pay everything. We had to pay left and right for. I was still paying off my dress blue uniform. I never had a chance to wear it even once. Not once did I wear that thing, and I was still paying it off. And I had to replace my uniform stuff that was supposedly burnt up in a fire in Guam. I had to buy all new stuff, all new civilian clothes too. And of course, we had to buy everything ourselves. We had to buy haircuts. We had to pay to make our uniforms cleaned and pressed. We had to pay for every little thing. I think if the Marine Corps had its way, they would have charged us for the bullets we shot. I guess they figured we wouldn't have shot that many. And we all came from working class, families, and struggled to make ends meet. We weren't no senator's son, as the Vietnam War song, lyrics of the Vietnam War song was. So it was tough for us, and yet all around us it seemed that people were getting rich on the war, and it wasn't us. Well, I hope you liked my stories. Give me a thumbs up if you did. Subscribe to my channel, and hopefully you come back and listen to me rant and rave even more. Thank you.